Afternoon, folks. We're going to continue on with the agenda here. This is going to be broadcast on the web. So our next speaker is Mubin Shaikh. Mubin is a former extremist who's been de-radicalized and now works with international governments to deal with ISIS. Mubin formerly worked undercover as an RCMP agent and with the Canadian Security Intelligence Agency. Mubin, thank you.
Thanks. First of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be back in Niagara Falls. So I was the undercover on the Toronto 18 terrorism case. It was a big case that happened in 2006, where 18 individuals were arrested. The safe house that they initially brought me to was Great Wolf Lodge, just on the road. So I don't really think I fit the environment with my big beard and long robes, but whatever. I mean, indoor play park for the kids, so it was great. Thank you again, Smile Conference, for having me. So some of my bio information is in the package. I'm just gonna make sure I'm testing out my space so I don't fall over. My bio information talks about I had an identity crisis when I was very young. It's such a stupid story. I mean, I was 17, I had a house party, coming from a very religious family. I grew up going to Quran school in Toronto, and it was like the Indo-Pakistani model of Quran school, where it's a wooden bench and boys are on one side, girls on the other side, and you're rocking back and forth, reciting the verses of the Quran, but not understanding a word of what you're reading. And so 17, I had a house party. My parents were out of the country. Unbeknownst to me, my dad had told his brother, who was, hard-ass fundamentalist guy, to check on the house while he was gone. So of course, in the middle of the party, my uncle walks in the house and all hell breaks loose. I was basically shamed and guilt-tripped. You defiled the home. Your father is such an upstanding member of the community. How could you do this? You have girls here, that. So I basically told myself, how can I fix this? And I thought, if I need to get religious. And that's how I saw in my community that religious people were respected. They were looked on as good people, stable people. Excuse me. So I ended up going to India and Pakistan for 4 months. And while I was in Pakistan, I had a chance encounter with the Taliban. Became completely enamored by them, young Muslim kid looking for adventure, religious identity, and you find it in these guys. So basically, I came back to Canada, joined an extremist network of individuals who were really just anti-Western, and kept that up until the 9/11 attacks, which were really the first cognitive wedge that made me reconsider my commitment to the cause. I then went to Syria, spent 2 years studying Arabic and Islamic studies, saw a real police state. So, and I think the public throws that term around very loosely. This is not a police state. I mean, you got to go to a police state to see what it really looks like. And most importantly, while I was there, I spent time with a religious scholar who basically debunked my interpretations and my explanations for some of the verses. Because remember, I didn't know any Arabic. So I came back to Canada, 2004, and the London fertilizer bomb plot, the first Canadian arrested on terrorism charges, was connected to that bomb plot, Mubin Shaikh. Well, Mubin Shaikh sat beside me in the Quran school that I went to as a kid. And so that's what prompted me to contact the Security Intelligence Service. And basically they recruited me, and I worked undercover with them for almost 2 years. One of those cases moved on to be a public prosecution called the Toronto 18. I then spent 4 years and 5 legal hearings at the Superior Court, giving testimony as a fact witness. 11 were convicted eventually, and it's been a saga ever since. So what I did in 2012, really, when the Syrian war began, is I got on Twitter. And I saw, even when I was testifying, when I was watching the media coverage on this topic, I saw that I had some relevance, that given my experience, I could probably contribute to the debate and the discussion. So I completed a master's degree in policing, intelligence, counterterrorism, through my PhD now with Jeff. Jeff and I have the same PhD supervisor. And what I did was I created this Twitter handle called Caliphate Cop. Now I used my real name, I used my face, but I spoke the language of the extremists, and I plugged right into their narrative. So they declared a caliphate. Well, I appealed to the Jesus caliphate, because in Muslim belief, we believe in Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. We believe in his second coming, and that when he does return, he will rule with authority on the earth. And so that's the Jesus caliphate. And so Caliphate Cop was the handle that I used, and I would engage with a lot of foreign fighters who were online. And I wanted to kind of prove the point that even somebody like me who would be considered an apostate could still interact with them and be relevant. So the cover of my slide here says jihad, all right? And I'm not gonna get it. Period, all right? You can go into the linguistics and, you know, it means a struggle and your daily struggle and your daily jihad. That's great. But that's what it means for all intents and purposes in our context here. And what it says here at the bottom, it says, lahu shaklun akhar, that it has different forms. Al-muhim, the important thing, Allah tatruk, that you don't leave, makanak, each one its place. So you see the cover, it's got a USB, it's got a pen, and it's got a bullet. And that's the whole point. So this is and I was kind of weak on my date stamps. I mean, I should have been on that, but this is actually from October 2013, where they're saying, it's not how many people are killed, it's how many people are watching, right? Terrorism is a spectacle offense, right? Now, I'm not going to get into the social networking details. Brookings Institute with J.M. Berger, if you don't follow him already on Twitter, at IntelWire, I mean, buddy of mine, so I'm going to give him the plug-in. Through Brookings, they did a whole breakdown on this, analysis of the accounts and the networks and what they look like and where they branch off to. I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to get into what I started to see in terms of what these guys were doing online. So here's ask.fm. It's a platform where you can ask questions of people, whatever you want. Now, this was on the Syrian foreign fighter front, where people who were in Syria, you could ask them questions like, what do I bring with me? Or, you know, if I join ISIS, how long do I have to wait before I can, you know, shoot things? Or getting references to get over there. So I mean, in a lot of cases, you could just show up at the border and walk in and you could join in. Or newbies, or sorry, married brothers, you know, so if I'm married and I have kids, where do they stay? How do I, you know, where are they gonna live? How much are I gonna get paid? So all these questions were being asked. And of course, the really important question, are there good looking women there, right? Now these are young kids, right? Young boys, especially. And yes, you can chuckle at it, but also look into it a little bit deeper. You're dealing with adolescents, adolescent kids. And I'm gonna make the same comment, I mean, when the women foreign fighter stuff comes up, but you know, when you're subscribing to a religious interpretation that's very conservative, where you can't even shake hands with members of the opposite sex, never mind talking to them. And you know, there's this whole thing with navel gazing, right? Like to keep your gazes down, but like you navel gaze now, it's like, what are you doing? You know, I'm up here, buddy, I'm up here. So the whole point is that you're dealing with young kids who are repressed sexually. I believe that. And they find different ways to kind of get it out of their system. And you'll see this when the women issue comes up. So just to give you an example of some of the foreign fighter profiles of the people that I was following. So this guy up top, you know, I mean, good looking guy. Hey, I'm comfortable in my heterosexuality. And look what he's saying, you know, I'm an extremist. He's taking on that label that we're throwing at them. Now, I want you to keep an eye on Mujahid for Life, okay, bottom left corner there, all right? He's gonna feature again in my presentation. Then there's, of course, your female looking off to the side while she makes sure her shot is right and taking her picture. More examples of just some of what the profiles look like on Twitter, right? And some of the things that that you can do a content analysis, really, to say, like, for example, the bottom guy, when he says Al-Jazair, I mean, he's from Algeria, he's Algerian, and Dar al-Kufar. So Dar al-Kufar is a term used by extremists to refer to the West as the place of infidelity, all right, where infidels live, right? Yeah, infidels. And this is a guy he's one of the IED bomb makers for ISIS. And one of the things that I do is I micro-engage them. So what I did was I would insert myself into the network, building my rapport and my connections. It took a long while. Known spy, people were trash talking me all the time, death threats, I mean, all the time. But you know, it stuck after a while. So here's him showing pictures of his laboratory, right? Some more of his work that he's been working on. So, I mean, praising, you know, the Muslim divisions who were part of the Axis, part of the German Nazi army. Please keep in mind also, of course, there were many Muslims fighting for Britain. A message, right? It's quite the laboratory you got there. And he hasn't responded back to me. One of the things I also kind of hope to do is when they do come back online, maybe they feel the need to respond and they do it in an unsecure area and it shoots out a digital signature and, you know, he wakes up dead the next day. That'd be great. But so it's the women, and I mean, I can give you profiles after profiles, but I think this one really does it for me because look at what they're saying here. A caring wife for a mujahid today and loving mother to the mujahid tomorrow. And that's the whole point, is that the idea of women, and everyone talks about this, what's the lure for women on the other side? Well, when you're dealing with women who can't leave their homes, it's very difficult for them. They come from very conservative families. They can't be seen talking to boys outside and things like that. No way. So they stay at home. Their parents hear religious, melodious music coming from their room. They think, oh, my child is religious. They're pious. They don't go out. You see, like these infidels, right? They're staying at home. Well, they're staying at home talking to their jihadi boyfriends is what they're doing, right? And in fact, they talk about this, jihadi eye candy, right? And she talks in the longer article. I mean, it talks about how she would look at these videos and she would see them as really good-looking guys, and it's the swashbuckling jihadi prince is what it is, right? So the chance for them, you know, to marry someone that they want to marry, especially those that are pressured into marrying. I mean, arranged marriage is not really something Islamic per se. Like let's say in Hindu culture where that might be more acceptable. A lot of Indian Muslims who have grown up in that environment, you know, they take some of that cultural influence. So here's a chance for them to marry, you know, their own peers, basically. You know, for the love of jihad, till martyrdom do us part, right? And martyrdom did part them, right? He was killed I think it was a firefight. Now, so you have now a lot of these foreign Westerners who are over there, and we marvel at their social media, this and that. Well, they're products of the West, right? They've gone to school in the West. They have degrees in computer engineering, bless you, from the West, okay? So don't be surprised. They're born and bred in this environment, bless you, right? They're products of it. They live and breathe it, right? So look at the kind of things that they're putting up for people to consume. And hey, we're consumers of ISIS propaganda, big time, all right? Now, I'm gonna show you a beheading video, all right? Wait for it. Yeah. It's a real knife, obviously. It's obviously staged. You got the flag there, the mat on the floor.
Takbir! Takbir!
Right. So, I mean, most of the time, I've been doing a lot of these presentations with Special Operations Command in the U.S. And for them, I mean, the military side of things, they're always asking, well, what do we do? What's our role in all of this? Right? And the military really, I mean, their role is a kinetic role and, of course, analysis as well. It's really police in a domestic law enforcement context that it's more relevant to you, I think, than the military. But, you know, they're looking at this. I mean, the point I wanted to bring up is your cultural awareness, right? That in your units, you need to have subject matter experts who know this stuff, right? There are people out there. You just, I mean, find them. Get in touch with Jeff or myself. We'll find them for you, right? I'm local too, right? But the whole point is that you know how to exploit the material. So here is the whole idea, as far as I'm concerned, so I'm doing my PhD in psychology, and I say everything is psyops, okay? And so this is the US leaflet, developed by the Pentagon that they're dropping in ISIS areas, all right? Or those prone to ISIS recruitment. But look at the stuff that they put out, or look at it. Let me just go back to that. As soon as they picked up the gun, we picked up the gun, they started to listen, right? Sometimes people with the worst pasts create the best futures. Is it any wonder that you get these losers who are, drug addicted, criminal background, gangster wannabes, who join these groups? Because it's another gang. It's really like a gang. It's exactly the same as a gang, right? When deeds speak, words are nothing. Right? Don't think about it, right? Just get up and go. So if you were to kind of look at this and say, okay, well, maybe our counter messaging should focus on critical thinking skills. If they're saying just get up and go, maybe we should be saying, hey, look before you leap. Where are you headed, right? Something like that, right? Regretting chances that you didn't take. So now you have this situation where you have foreign fighters who have already returned. Syria foreign fighters, US, Canada, UK, you name it. What are you going to do with them? You can't charge them because you have no evidence of criminal wrongdoing, right? And you're going to have an undercover in ISIS? How are you going to answer for that? First of all, how are you going to get that guy to testify in court? Number one. And number two, what if, for the purposes of, getting his bona fides, he had to cut off heads or rape Yazidi prisoners? How's that going to play out for you on the stand, right? So now these guys come back, and you have members of their old network who regret that they didn't go. So now when this guy comes back, and in many cases will be regarded as a hero, what about those people in his periphery? What are they going to do, right? So just things to look at, right? Why would we want to leave when paradise lies ahead? So this idea of going to the next life, collecting, I always say that I had this one quote. I said, you're going to hell, so do not pass go, do not collect 70 virgins, right? So the idea is that you die as a martyr and you go to heaven, right? The Vikings, right? You were reunited in Valhalla, right? The idea of martyrdom for a noble cause. A lot of people, whether they're military or whatever, hell yeah, we die for what we believe in, absolutely, right? So they do the same thing. It's a general concept of martyrdom. You recognize where that's from? It's from Call of Duty. This is our Call of Duty, and we respawn in Jannah, in paradise, right? They play video games. These are. I don't want to say they're all like that, but a lot of them, if you've been watching their profiles, it's all about living the dream, so to speak, right? Living the jihadi dream, which is, you play. I had this one screen grabber. The guy says, I'm thinking about getting PlayStation 4, to really ramp up my my training, right? It's like, yeah, you do that. Get your training from Call of Duty and then deploy and then see how long you live, right? So I'm going to give you an example of, let me just see which particular one this is. Oh, yes. So you've seen some of the videos, but you want to see quality? Look at quality. And they know we're struggling with counter messaging. They know all this stuff, but look at how...
In the face of the dark wave of the Crusader force, the
historical
themes. Land of two rivers,
Crusaders, Christians versus Muslims,
to a mission that would transform the political landscape of the world. A mission that would herald a return to the
perfect
Khilafah
English accent,
and revive the creed of Tawheed. It was the establishment of the Islamic State, nourished by the blood of the truthful Mujahideen, to unite the Ummah on one call, one banner, one
responding
leader.
to the fragmentation in the Muslim world.
Thus, the war between Iman and Kufr was ignited.
Belief and disbelief.
You are with us or against us.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
They thought they were one.
See the music? It's catchy, isn't it?
Major combat operations in Iraq have ended. In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
They lied. The flames were only beginning to intensify. Obama then claimed it was over.
Iraq's future will be in the hands of its people. America's war in Iraq will be over.
They lied. By the grace of Allah, the Islamic State expanded into the land of Sham.
بالسيف جمع الطغام ونمحو عن الكون بين الظلام فيبزغ في الكون فجر جديد فيبزغ في الكون فجر جديد صواريمنا في العدا قاطعات وأفعالنا في الثرى ساطعات.
The ravenous flame continued spreading, roaring in hunger for the fuel of Nusayri blood. The flames in
Nusayri is the
Iraq,
Shia.
meanwhile, continued their
Shia
crawl,
sect,
growing
Assad.
stronger, leaving the Americans in bewilderment, pondering what strategy to adopt in fighting the Islamic State. The reply from the White House was deceitful, as Obama was forced to respond to the rapid rise of the Islamic State.
To stop the advance on Erbil, I've directed our military to take targeted strikes against ISIL terrorist convoys should they move toward the city. And so even as we support Iraqis as they take the fight to these terrorists, American combat troops will not be returning to fight in Iraq.
They lied, for in reality, the fighting had just begun.
الآن جاء القتال.
Leave it at this quote.
الآن جاء القتال. وإننا منصورون
Pay
إن شاء
attention what he
الله.
says.
سواء
Whether you
أخرجتم
leave
أم
or you
لم
don't
تخرجوا.
leave.
فإن انتصارنا باستمرارنا.
Victory
ولئن
through
خرجتم
persistence.
لتعودن
And
عما
if you
قريب.
leave, you will
ولئن
return.
عجزتم عن
And if you
العودة
won't return, we'll come to
فلنأتينكم من
you.
شتى البقاع.
And that's the point. That's why all these lone actors that you see popping up, the lowest hanging fruits, this is just the first, this is just the beginning, right? I mean, we can interdict those. Those are relatively easy. I mean, one guy goes off, I don't mean to be callous, but, a mass spectacle attack, I mean, with hundreds dead, that's very different from a few dead, right? You want to mitigate, obviously, the number of deaths, whatnot. But when you start to get, look at what happened in France, right? 2 guys trained by Al-Qaeda in Yemen. 2 guys, actually 3 guys. The other guy went off and took the Jewish Delhi hostage, of course. But look at what those 3 guys could do, right? So I was talking about video games and their lust for this sort of stuff.
My name
Grand
is Abu
Theft Auto.
Muslim.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
your brother in Islam here in Syria.
Okay.
I originally come from Canada.
And most Canadians have seen this one, but again, quality of the production. It's taken from a tourism video, actually.
Before Islam, I was like any other regular Canadian. I watched hockey. I went to the cottage in the summertime. I love to fish.
Right?
I wanted to
Depicting
go
themselves as
hunting.
good old boys.
I liked outdoors. I liked sports.
Right? We're not crazies.
ولهم منازل في الجنان وصحبة ومعين خيرات يزيد ويكثر.
I was like your everyday regular Canadian before Islam. Then, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me from the darkness of kufr.
Okay, so I'm going
to
to
the light
skip
of
that to
Iman.
go to the next one, which, Grand Theft Auto, right? And they've been told to do this. I mean, you want to practice, you want to fantasize, right? If you look at, let's say serial sexual offenders, what they do is it's about reliving the fantasy. So they have this fantasy of what they want to do, then they end up going and doing it, right? So here, I'm not saying video games make people terrorists, but I am saying that video games do allow people to live out their fantasies, which they normally would not do in the real world. But when you're dealing with a group that's telling you, no, watch these videos, practice, get your fantasies in order, then go out and do it. So here's Grand Theft Auto. And this is Miami Airport, I believe. Right? How easy is this to do in your city right now? Of course, it's a video game because the police response is so fast, right? No one laughed. But the whole idea is that, yeah, even first responders shoot at them. Right? So anyways, so in terms of, so what were governments doing about this? So the State Department stood up this Twitter account called Think Again, Turn Away. And people have trashed it a bit, but I give them credit because they were doing it when nobody else was doing it. So Think Again, Turn Away is, you know, one of the things that they basically go into the network of ISIS or Al-Qaeda guys, and they basically, you know, show the failings of ISIS or Al-Qaeda, right, to delegitimize the group. So here is a video that they produced for this purpose. If you compare the quality of what ISIS puts out and what governments are putting out, like US government, it's pretty bad. Just it's a wide gap.
لم يجري ما في حسابه حساب الله هو أقوى. فجر المجرم واستشهد عندنا رجال وشباب وأطفال وسالت الدماء في ليلة مباركة، ليلة 28 من رمضان قبيل العيد. دولة الإسلام. العراق became one country and the other countries are on the way. They are on the list. Inshallah. We'll take them from Kufr to Islam, from Shirk to Tawheed, inshallah. دخول طاغوت الأردن.
Look at the clown to the right of him, he's looking and smiling.
هناك بالذبح. والله اقسم بالله غير نجيب منفخخات بالاطنان المطلقه باذن الله.
You know, Jeff showed you the picture of the guy with his passport, destroying his passport. This has been one issue, is that whose passport are they destroying? I mean, sometimes it may appear that they're destroying their passport. Oh, they can't come back. But it's not their passport that they just destroyed, and so they can come back. So I'll move on from this. I mean, you get the idea. This is an NGO-based production. Abdullah X, he's online. He's also an ex-extremist who actually, you know, came back to the light side. And this is what he puts out.
Salam. Thinking about Syria and what's going on there has become almost a necessity now. But equally, thinking about the best way to support the people of Syria should be at the forefront of that process. Our young people
so non-government,
driven to act
non-law enforcement.
Use this dynamic for a better outcome, inshallah. Here are 5 considerations or questions that an individual could do with asking him or herself on a Syria issue. Number 1, have you thought about the actual needs of the people, especially women and children in Syria? Number 2, if you have, then do you genuinely think that going out there to fight and potentially be killed will affect those suffering in a positive way? Number 3, do the people of Syria really need you to go out there and fight when you don't fully know the terrain, the political reality, and the actual motivations of groups who are claiming to be fighting for Islam? Number 4, if you have families and even basic responsibilities where you live, how would you justify leaving them for a conflict in which Muslims are essentially killing other Muslims indiscriminately and without regard for the Islamic principles of warfare and the protection of civilian life? Number 5, have you asked yourself sincerely what your actual maqasid, objective is, and if this is actually anything to do with Islam or protecting other people? If you have, then have you not found more constructive ways to support the innocent people of Syria compared to trying to go out there and fight to simulate some video game that you feel you have to reenact in real life? There is a call of duty for Syria, and it is to be well informed and not misinformed. Allah does not need your so-called martyrdom when the fight out there is about power and influence in the form of some manufactured jihad. Do you even know how Fard Ain and Fard Kifaya apply to you in your homeland and to your own responsibilities? Engage in relief work for those people and raise awareness. Don't go and fight for a so-called cause you have not even questioned critically. More next week, inshallah, on another topic that is current or that will not go away. Abdullah X, peace.
Right? Simple, short, to the point. So of course, with my own involvement online, I started to be noticed by ISIS and their fanboys, as they're called, right? So what murtad means apostate, right? So basically an apostate is a traitor, is somebody who has left your camp has gone over to the enemy's camp, and you can be executed, basically. So it's interesting. When I see all these anonymous LinkedIn views, I don't know who it is, if it's like government or ISIS. Just more examples of some of the stuff that I get, right? So, and you gotta look, you gotta play with them at their level, right? And you can't do this with an official police account saying things like, "I'm just gonna rip your head off," right? Like, you can't do that, right? But you gotta play with them a bit, right? Or this guy, like, you know, so when they see that I start to follow him, he catches on. Wait a second, this is not a good guy. So you gotta play with them a bit, right? Or this, right? So he'll tag me in the tweet. Now this guy has been, him and I have been going back and forth for like a couple of years at least, right? And that's the point. The point is that they'll talk to me. They'll engage with me. And here this guy is lamenting the fact that these people are still talking to me, right? So more examples of NGO-driven CVE, countering violence extremism messaging. Right, so this is the sister of Abdullah X, Muslima X. They're trying to do this with, I don't know what the follower level is right now, but we'll see. You see that one? This is my friend Soleiman Bakit. You see that scar on his face? Well, what he does is he makes comics. All right, and I love what he says. That there is a hero deficit in the Muslim world, Muslim and Arab world. There are no heroes for them to look at. When he went into the schools in Jordan, he saw that when he asked, who was your hero, most of the people said Osama bin Laden. So what he said is, you know, how come there's no Muslim Batman? Or, you know, whatever. So he got the idea, hey, let me create heroes. And that's what he's done. And it's been extremely effective. Younger kids, you know, they love comics. I mean, they'll live in that world. And in his comics, the counterterrorism units are the heroes, right? So because of him putting out these comics, the extremists attacked him one night after he was leaving work. They slashed his face with a razor blade. So he's got this super cool, super villain scar that goes down his face. I mean, in his own words, it's helped his dating life like by, you know, 10 points at least. So cartoons are obviously very effective, you know, to relay the message. And it's quick, it hits home, it makes the point very clear. And I think this is one thing that counter messaging is gonna go towards. Like, now what I do is I focus on the theology, okay, the Islamic religion, the scriptural references, okay? And so for example, the first caliph, the real caliph, Abu Bakr, this is his order to the soldiers. So when people say that, oh, because ISIS quotes from the Quran, they're Islamic, that's a ridiculous argument. It's ridiculous because you have white supremacist movements that quote the Bible, right? Regularly, they do it to this day. You know, in Britain, you have Britain First and groups like that who are like, they push out a Christian identity, but it's like, I don't think Jesus would be happy with what you're doing. Or if you draw your attention to the bottom, the bottommost reference. So for example, when they say, oh, well, Americans are killing our civilians with their drone strikes, so we can kill their civilians. That's the argument, that's the logic they use, right? Reciprocity, right? Well, actually, the rule is you can't do that, right? When it's wrong, just because somebody else does it to you, doesn't mean you can do the same thing back to them. Or for example, now this is going to get a little complicated, so I'll try to keep it focused myself. So do I have a laser here? Yeah. The term is Khawarij, okay? About the Khawarij, it's in brackets there, right? Khawarij refers to a deviant sect that emerged in the early years of Islam that actually fought the early Muslims. They made war with them. They declared other Muslims as apostates. They took their cities, they took their wealth, they kidnapped women, they did all these things. And so what I have been doing is I have been showing that for a lot of young people who are, you know, they talk about this stuff, I just right away go to this and say, yeah, but you're joining this Khawarij group. This is a deviant group that is known in the Islamic material as being, they're the ones who are actually out of Islam, right? The Prophet, peace be upon him, says they will leave Islam, right? Or I show them this. So when I get the message, oh, you apostate, blah, blah, blah. I actually say, no, you are the apostate, really. So I know it gets a little apocalyptic, and that's cool. But when it says here in the last days, young foolish people, young foolish youth, ahdath al-asnan, like whose teeth are still forming, they will emerge. They will quote the best of words, but the faith doesn't go beyond their throats. It's superficial. That's why when you look at a lot of these guys, they claim religiosity, but you break them down, you realize they're dumb. They don't know the religion as well as they claim they do. All right, or more scriptural references. You know what I mean? So, blessedness is for those who kill them and who are killed by them. Right? I think this is the one that has dogs of hell. Yeah, the Khawarij are the dogs of hellfire. So when the Prophet, peace be upon him, is saying these things about the Khawarij, and your behavior and activities match exactly what the Khawarij are doing, you're Khawarij. And I guarantee you, and I've seen this, it really bothers them, because if they will never accept that we are Khawarij, of course, but the fact that you can draw scriptural references that condemn what they're doing is gold as far as I'm concerned, right? And so I always say this when they try to quote a verse of the Quran, I always say, well, don't even quote the Quran. You guys are not even believers, right? Because you were believers, but they left, right? They're disbelievers now. So this gets really apocalyptic. So what it's saying here is that every time these extremists will manifest themselves, okay, until from their last remnants, the Antichrist will emerge. Now, I am a Muslim. I do believe in particular theology. And like I said, we believe that Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, will return to fight the Antichrist. Right? And now here I have a reference that's saying that the Antichrist is going to come from this group of extremists. And in fact, another scriptural reference even specifies where they're going to come. It says the Antichrist will appear on the road between Iraq and Syria. And so I show this to them, and I'm like, look, this is the group that you belong to, actually. You're the Antichrist group, right? So let's bring it back to Mujahid for Life. And I'm winding down. I'm like, how much time do I have? I have like 10 minutes, 15, cool. So Mujahid for Life, something-year-old kid from Finland, right? No Arabic, right? He's got some, he's learning. He's learning, he's studious. And I micro-engaged, meaning talk to him, friendly sometimes. I have these like 3 categories of approaches that I use. One is like hostile aggressive, right? For like, you're dogs of hell, blah, 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 you're gonna burn. Then there's passive aggressive, which is like I'll start the sentence harshly, but then I'll kind of finish it softly. And then passive, where I don't even talk really I don't attack them per se, right? It's for rapport building, right? Depending on what their attitude is like. So what happened is this guy, we got online and he became extremely popular on Twitter in the ISIS networks, all right? And now I know there's, presentation faux pas, there's a lot of text on it, so you're reading it now, so I'll let you read it. 11,000 followers. Remember Jeff referenced Shami Witness? I'm gonna show you a little bit about that. Okay, so he considers himself a diplomat for ISIS, okay? All right, remember half of jihad is media, all right? He's recanted his support for ISIS. I worked on this kid for a long time. And not only did I get him out, I flipped him and he went back in and now he's arguing against them, all right? I talk about him because his story became public, so I'll mention it. So I talked about, criticisms against the State Department, and people were, like you see, it's been described as this. It's embarrassing, it's pathetic, it's whatever. And they're referencing this kid, Amriki Witness. Now, Amriki Witness, so his profile is, and Amriki Witness is piggybacking off of Shami Witness. Shami Witness, Sham means the Levant. And Shami Witness, put himself out there as this like extremely well-informed individual. And so a lot of accounts, Australia Witness, Amriki Witness, and look what he says, dedicated to raising awareness about the upcoming conquest of the Americas and the benefits it has upon the American people, right? So let me see. All right. So Amriki Witness, Mujahid for Life, and we would frequently debate, discuss, share ideas, challenge ideas, right? Turns out he was a 17-year-old kid from Virginia. Scrawny little kid. Crohn's disease. I mean, there's a picture of him online. He's got some cupcake or something sitting in front of it. And he looks like he's like that big, right? And that's the point. Because if for a kid who is that big, he gets online, suddenly from zero to hero overnight. They did all the right things. They sent him to an imam. In fact, he told me that the FBI were asking his friends about him. And I told him, I was like, dude, that means you're like, if they're watching you, that means you're on their radar. Like, you're being targeted for prosecution is what's happening, right? This is part of my dissuade the young kids, right? Oh no, God will protect me because I'm on God's side. I was like, if you jump off a building and you say God's gonna protect me, he's not gonna protect you. God created gravity too, You're gonna fall and splat. And he also created law enforcement, police. So it's part of God's system. So, we went and I told him, I said, you are gonna remember our conversations when you're sitting in that room by yourself. I know he's thinking about it. I know it, right? So I was actually at the FBI's counterterrorism division when I gave them the similar presentation, and I showed them, I'm like, do you know about this guy? He's 12 miles from your HQ. And then shortly after, an investigation was started, and he got arrested because he lured an 18-year-old kid to go and join ISIS, and who did go, and he's probably going to end up dead. We don't know if he is dead, but that got him 11 years in federal prison in the US, right? So, Shami Witness, right? Man, Indian from Bangladesh, right? And a lot of people, it rocked a lot of people. And most recently, there was a Australia witness, Australia. He was a Jewish American kid, a Jewish kid. I don't know what the hell that kid was doing. If he got caught, too much into, being online with all these guys, and you get caught up in it, right? It's very similar to, an undercover who goes in and he's in too long. You better like make sure he's okay and everything's all right. So he got caught up. He got arrested, obviously. But and I'm winding down here. So here's an example of Al-Finlandi today. He's online. He's arguing against ISIS. And these are the most credible voices. Even for me, I may not be the most credible person. Like, I do have this unique background, but for some, I'm a sellout, right? But a kid like this could probably do a lot more than entire counterterrorism units in terms of messaging and countering and preventing, right? So here it is. I'm a murtad after leaving the ISIS fan club. May Allah guide these ignorant people. So one last one is this was a story that was in the New York Times, how ISIS lured a Sunday school teacher. All right. Here's a girl who fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Her parents lost custody of her, so her caregivers is her grandmother, right? It's a generational gap. Her siblings, the oldest one, she's 20-something. The oldest one is like 9, right? So huge generational gap, living in the middle of nowhere in the state of Washington, just outside of Seattle. Vulnerable to recruitment. And in fact, that's what they were doing, bless you. That's exactly what they were doing. They spent hours and hours and hours. It's exactly like somebody said, I was talking to the Ottawa police, human trafficking. Same thing. Same luring techniques. So what? You use scriptural references. The guy was sending her a box of chocolates. I love you. I can't wait to be with you. Blah, 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 this and that. And they lure these girls over thinking they're meeting their jihadi boyfriend. And then it's like, sorry, you're now marrying that foreign fighter. And it's like, what? And a lot of those girls, they're now on clampdown. Some of those girls, they went there. They were still in their preparation phase, I guess, where they're kept in a home, managed by an ISIS woman, foreign fighter usually, and they're extolling all the praises and virtues of them being, in the caliphate and how great everything is, right? And then they realize how not great it is, and then there's a clampdown. Then you don't see them tweeting much because they're crying and they want to go home. And I do, look, I'm of two minds, right? Like I have kids now, maybe that's made me a little soft, I don't know. But I do see some of them as victims, absolutely. They really are. Some of them just so vulnerable, stupid teenagehood, you know what I mean? I don't know. So anyways, examples of screen grabs of where I was engaging her, you know, building up trust with her. So, you know, she's saying, look, I trust them because they actually helped me learn Islam before I was even Muslim. They reached out to me before I even thought about Islam because they cared, right? That's the narrative, that's the theme. So you have to break that down, right? Identify the narrative or the theme and then delegitimize it. So basically I'm saying, you know what, you take your Islam from strangers that do you know their faces even, right? So what I started to do was I kept hammering her over and over and over, right? I gave her free resources online to study Islam, right? And then, here you go. So I'm sincere when I say they've always been kind to me, but they read the messages. I knew they would and got mad. Oh, what do you mean they read the messages? Who? So then I started to look back at some of the people. Sure enough, they were people that I had engaged with before and they had blocked me now, right? So I told her, like, they're predators, they're devils. And in the end, and it's the second last slide. In the end, you know, she's like, look, you know, I'm not like that anymore. I'm not going to be like that, you know, and I realized I was a little hard on her and she felt like you must hate me now. And I was like, you know, I'm sorry. I don't mean that. And I got all passive and nice with her again. So, anyways, that's the cover of my book. Anyway, I don't do this to pitch the book really. It's really the psyops behind it. Okay. So like the scarf is a you know, military Western Forces print. That robe is actually made in Syria. I'm doing the finger, you know, the bearing witness that there's only one God. You always see them doing that. And I'm holding, you know, rather than go with the cliche, I'm holding an AK-47. I have the most dangerous weapon. It's the smartphone. Thank you very much. But you got my email there, and I'm on Twitter. I don't argue with them anymore. Like 15-year-old kids, I don't have time to, you know, to be online like 29 hours a day. Anyways, thanks.
Got a question over here. I got some mics.
Oh, yeah, questions?
If you got a question, just wait till I get with the mic so the translators can get it for our Panama guests over here.
Mubin, besides traditional social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, what do you find is the most valuable forum to engage and where you actually are able to sort of have conversations with people?
So, you know, there are so many platforms now, like it's hard to keep up. I just stayed on Twitter. That's where the action was, especially at that time 2 years ago. That's when all the action was. So I continue to just stay on Twitter. Facebook is just like a public persona, you know, public narratives, not really counter messaging per se. But I've just stuck to Twitter. That's where most of these guys have been hanging around. But I mean, just obviously on every other platform it can be done. Every other platform it can be done. I think what needs to be done is like to kind of stand up volunteers. You know, you're not going to pay people to do this, right? Like maybe, I don't know if you want to do that, but I would encourage like you know, frame it under community development, community outreach, whatever fancy term you want to use, and stand up the community to say, hey, you should probably stand up for your religion. What these people are doing, people need to know what the real teachings of Islam are. Why don't you go on and teach people this? Don't frame it under countering violent extremism, counterterrorism. No, stand up for your religion. And that's the end goal, I think, is to have just people themselves willingly doing it. You'll drown them out, no problem. Nope. Oh, yeah. It's a great question. They're clapping already for it.
All right, just wanted to.
Thank you. Cool. Cheers.
Yeah, very good. Mubin, thank you. I have, again, just to reiterate, incredible story. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. It was great to hear. Thank you.